Hi, this is Ali. Today I'm going to walk through the process of automatically generating an IKE form from your PLS-POLE component file library. So up at the top of the screen, you see an empty IKE form. Just call this one Update 1. And at the bottom of the screen, you see the IKE to PLS integration. So we're going to go through two steps. The first is going to be generating an Excel file which contains all of the component file information. We're then going to open that up, make a couple modifications, and save that file. After we modify that file, we're then going to use the Update Existing Form option, which will read that file and create an IKE form and automatically upload it to IKE Office. So let's go through that process now. So this it's going to rely on your PLS-POLE component file. So if you have your PLS-POLE component file paths defined in the settings, you'll be able to continue with this process. So let's go ahead and start it up. So we'll just save this to the desktop. The default name is extracted component files. And when that opens up, now we get this Excel file. You can see at the bottom there are a number of tabs. So what the tabs and what this Excel file is, this is basically all of the nested lists and select lists in the form and its subforms. Here the poles, all the information here goes into the pole type nested list. Guides, equipment framing, insulators, arm insulators, all of those tabs contain information that are going to be included in the that specific nested list or select list in the IKE form. So let's customize the pole type list a little bit, and then we'll upload this to show is one that you can make changes here, and those will be reflected in your form, and then also just to show how quickly it can be to update an IKE form. So let's take a look here. So for the poles, we have the option to define an order. So by default, wood poles will be defined first, followed by steel, concrete, laminated wood, and FRP poles. So let's just change this around. Let's say we want steel poles to show up first and wood poles to show up second. Okay, so the next thing to customize here, we have the wood poles. So the wood pole species, class, and height. Let's say that we only want Douglas fir, and yeah, so let's just get rid of all of the other pole types and only leave the Douglas fir. And let's also say maybe we only want to have class 1 and class H1. So let's also get rid of the H2 poles. Okay, and now moving on to steel. Let's take a look here. Well, we have this additional column that we didn't have in the wood pole table of category. So what this allows you to do, you can leave it blank or you can define it. If you leave it blank, so in this case, this is a nested list. If you leave it blank, it will all of these elements will appear in the second column of the nested list. If you add a category, it'll use that that category in the second column, and then all of the all the elements with the same category will be placed in the third column of the nested list. So let's show kind of how this would work. Let's put the weathering steel poles into a category. So we'll scroll down here, and then we'll put the galvanized poles in another category. And we'll bring that down to here. And notice there's some other pole types here. Let's just clean that up and get rid of the additional poles. Okay, looking here, there are a couple concrete poles, a couple laminated wood. You know what? To keep things simple, let's get rid of all the other types. So we're going to get rid of all the laminated wood and all the FRP poles. Also get rid of the concrete poles. So our filtered pole type nested list now is going to have steel poles and wood poles. The steel poles are going to appear first, followed by the wood poles. Steel poles are going to have two categories. There's going to be weathering and galvanized. And here's a couple more galv. And yeah, and then the wood poles, there's just going to be one species, but there will be two classes, H1 and class 1. Oh, there's another 3 there. Okay, so I'll quickly just show some of these other tabs, but won't make any more modifications. So here you can choose which down guides, span guides, and anchors you'd like to have in your select lists. Here, in a similar fashion to the steel poles, you can define categories for your equipment. And here too, equipment, there are two types. There's equipment from your standard equipment library. There's also equipment that comes in from your framing library. So you can add from both. Next is the framings tab. So this is dedicated for framings. You can include equipment here if you'd like, but this is going to display in the span subform. So this is mainly geared towards cross arms and insulator assemblies. But in this case, we have two columns for categories. So it allows you to define two levels of hierarchy to categorize the framings. Insulators, arms, and arm insulators all have a pretty similar approach, similar structure, very similar to the pole structure. But yeah, like I said, let's just focus on these changes, and once we're happy, we save everything, and let's just close out of there. And we'll follow on to the next step now, which is just to update the existing form. So if we select the update button, we're then prompted to select which form to update. Now, this provides a list of all of your forms, all your IKE forms. Up at the top is the one that we're looking for, update 1. So we're going to select that and click continue, and then provide the link to the Excel file that we just generated. And we're going to get one more validation request to let us know that this is going to overwrite anything that we have in our form. And just to show you, so let's put in a photo measure and save that. Just to show you that it will overwrite anything in that form. So once we're ready, we're just going to click OK, yes. and the integration, it automatically, you see it opened up a new tab, but now that same form, update 1, it is complete with the PLS, um, the standard PLS form. So if we look through these elements, let's go into the POLE subform, and let's look at the POLE type nested list. Now this is the one that we just modified. So if we take a look, we can see, okay, the first column, the steel poles are first, followed by the wood poles, and in this case we only have that Douglas fir. Now for the steel poles, we created 2 categories, galvanized and weathering, and you see both the galvanized and weathering, and as you select between the two, see for the galvanized poles, only the galvanized are coming through, and the weathering, only the weathering are coming through. And now for the Douglas fir, we narrow that down to class H1 and class 1, and those 2 are coming up as well. Now I'll just kind of show some of the other ones. So let's open up the span subform. If we go into the framings and go into framing type, in this case we did not define either of those 2 categories. So all of those elements, they're all going to come out under that first column. And you can see it gets quite long. So that's a really good, especially with the framings, that's a good candidate for some additional organization. Yeah, and then one more check. So this was the previous form that we had. It hasn't been updated yet, hasn't been refreshed. So let's just reload this page just to show that these changes to this form that we generated previously will be overwritten. Oh, sorry, so you sometimes have to, navigate back out to the forms and reload form. Okay, so when you come back in and reload that form, you can see it's now matching what we just took a look at. And then again, if we look at the POLE subform, we can go into the POLE type and see the same filtering that we performed in the Excel file. So that concludes this quick little overview of the form integration, and thank you for your time.